Hello, dear friends. This update on the live end times saga will be tight packed with dozens of current and future events and few additional points on prepping. And now, this is a 5 years old video recorded by an Orthodox woman who heard that the documents are the precursors of the Mark of the Donkey, and at that time she burned them. So after that, that's how the story starts, and after that she realized lots of interesting legal aspects of this entire thing, and according to her, some of them were inspired by lucid dreams sent by the Lord. When she initially burned her passport, at that time she was very sick for a long time, and all of a sudden, on the day on which she ceremonially burned her passport, all of a sudden she felt healthy, which was very unusual for her long-term, very serious sickness. And then, after a few days, everything was back to the previous level of sickness, which made her think deep and look into the situation with a critical eye, what is going on. And then she saw that although the passport was physically destroyed, it was still valid. And that took her on a legal quest, during which she discovered that burning it is not enough. More important was the signature and the vow which she gave at the time she became a law-abiding citizen of her country. Because in the original agreement it is said that by becoming a law-abiding citizen, one agrees for all future passports and all future changes in the legislation. So what that basically and practically means for all of us who have signed such agreements with one country or another is that we have given them a perfect karmic universal right to do anything they wish with us. They can hunt us like animals, implant anything on us, cook us in their reptilian restaurants, take away our children. She also turned to the oldest books to trace the history of the entire concept of organizing the humans into countries. Maybe it was not really a spontaneous side effect of people getting more advanced. Maybe it was done after all to ensure that there are always wars and to ensure that all people are law-abiding citizens, preparing the humanity for the final step of obedience when almost everybody voluntarily signs a contract with the devil, because it will be compulsory. This is just a hint of what is about to come. This is a proposed legislation in Brazil. It's not a joke. It's on their official government website. The link should be in the description of this video. This is just an automatic translation of the legislation, but it will give you some hints. 8 years of imprisonment and a fine for not getting fixed or telling the truth about it. And of course, in the prison, the same program will be made compulsory by physical force. So maybe this type of dwelling looked kind of crazy when you were listening to the previous End Times episodes a couple of years ago, but as the events start developing faster and faster, it will seem less and less crazy to you. And getting back to the story of the Russian lady who burned her passport, eventually she sought legal help and she managed to revoke her original signature on her original very first passport, where she agreed to be a law-abiding citizen. And only then she left to live in real peace in the countryside. Of course, she keeps a distance from the entire civilization, because even for simple things, for example, even YouTube, to use this platform, we have to agree to the terms and conditions, and over there, of course, we have to be law-abiding citizens. Now, in Russia, at least back then, years ago, they had an official procedure in which one can revoke one's passport, actually. I don't know if that gate is still opened, probably not. I heard somewhere that now they have stopped accepting the passports at the counters for return. But is it some types of passports or all passports? That I don't know. That video inspired me to have a look at the laws of my own country. Unfortunately, here there is no question, and it seems there never has been such a thing as canceling one's citizenship. It seems that's the only way to get rid of, to revoke one's passport. I mean, the signature which allows all passports. And the only way I could find was to revoke one's citizenship, but that's also for most people impossible. Here they allow it only if they are sure that you will become law-abiding citizen of some other country. But as far as I gather, in some countries still the old laws are in force, where one can submit a simple, even self-written letter and revoke one's signature and one's citizenship without any problems, easily. That's why I will try to leave the comments section under this video open, specifically for those who have proper legal information. Write, please, for which country you have a legal information of how this procedure can be done. It looks like a very good solution, actually. Then one will not be in the database of any country. They will not send you a surprise smart cards document by mail. Less chance to get drafted in the army. So what happens when people legally sign that their country can make the decisions for them and they are obliged, they have pre-approved all future changes in the law? She gives Russia as an example again. Russia had a king, Nikolai. He was a God-abiding man, at least for the standards of current age, and when the Bolshevik Revolution was staged in Russia, to replace that regime with something worse, they do this regularly with the regimes. Being a man of honor, he simply refused to hand down the country to the Bolsheviks. He preferred death for him and his entire family rather than handing the power he had voluntarily to the Bolsheviks. And as a result, those insurgents, those occupators of the throne, who don't have a right on it, they don't have the karmic right to rule the people, the right from the universe. And although the common soldiers on the field who were doing the murder didn't understand all these things, the high-level ranking devils and reptilians who run the show, they understood what are the consequences of this refusal of the king. And that's why they had to get the right again from where it went after his death, and automatically, by the law of the universe, when the king is dead and there is no proper king successor, rightful successor to the throne, the right to rule is transferred to the people, to the common people themselves. And that's why these devils devised a clever method to rob them of their right and to rob them of their land. And this simple, clever method is this signature of becoming a law-abiding citizen. And as we saw in the Survivors of Atlantis series, it played in a similar way for more or less all countries in Europe. One after another, the righteous kings were placed by insurgents, and it was all centrally organized. And the lady who recorded this video is reminding us something very wise, that if enough people in a given territory revoke their signatures from the papers where agreed to have passports, not just the current copy of the passport they have, but having passports one after another by being law-abiding citizens. If enough people in given territory do that, the demonic grip in that given area will be tangibly reduced, and those people will have better chances during the upcoming severe storm. In addition, the lady touched upon the subject of the revival of the USSR, something which came up in the Paramonov videos. Even back then, 5 years ago, when she was making the recording, she said that lots of Soviet Union institutions are still alive, and the demons, according to her, who were behind the USSR project, they preserved these institutions and kept them intact over the decades of democracy, so that they will not need to bother and look for new personnel in a hurry, to hire new personnel when they want to revive the USSR project again. According to her, they decided to temporarily introduce democracy in Russia to ruin lots of good stuff and infrastructure which is there, and then when the time comes, they will blame the democracy itself for it, and the people themselves will be happy to re-elect the communist style again, with the hope that life will be again as before. But of course, that will be just yet another monkey trick, because then the people eagerly and voluntarily will embrace a regime which will be even more oppressive. So that is quite a different perspective on the return of the USSR than the one which I outlined in the videos about Paramonov. We'll see which of the two will come true, or if any of them comes true. But it is possible that they are both right, this lady and Paramonov, because the future so-called communist regime, which seems to be very likely to come again in Russia, it may not be exactly the wing of which Paramonov claims to be the head, but some other dark double of the same organization. We know that the devil is the monkey of the Lord, and he does everything almost like it should be, but with some slight changes, which of course make the full thing go the opposite way than it should go. Another material which caught my attention, and I decided it would be worthwhile to share with you, was about Starets Vlasy. He left Earth a bit more than a year ago, and while he was still alive, he was famous as saint. He was loved by the people. People respected his opinion, and when the era of the fix started, they sought advice from him. And in this video, on camera, he openly calls the people to take it, although previously he has been advising against. Now, a couple of days after his funeral, he appeared in the dreams and lucid visions of, I believe, a couple of people, although I could find only one complete record of what he said, but the essence is the same. He is on the way to hell for the ill advice he gave to the people. Here is the original text, and a lot of what he said, allegedly, from over the other side, from the place where souls go after they die, we already know. Just some highlights are that the fix is the liquid mark of the donkey. To his own donkey people, one thing was administered, but what they put in the ordinary crowd was a completely different poison, nothing to do with the purpose it was advertised for. Most of the people who have taken it, it will take them 9 months to become non-human, and after that, most of them will not live more than 5 years. Other highlights from the material, according to which the donkey will publicly come to power after most people have already accepted the fix. And then in EU, they will start his supercomputer and will activate all of their 5, 6, 7G networks, whatever, all kinds of antennas and satellites. And with the help of this monstrous computer, which will have a machinery of the size of, let's say, 5-story building, they will be able to remotely control completely the people of the donkey. He also points out one ingredient of the substance, which is material from thousands of murdered infants, and by accepting that in one's own body, one becomes an accomplice. So this time frame, which he mentions of 5 years, fits very well with the time frame I've been suggesting in the End Times episodes. Many official documents from the Chamber of Hell, as Mary Julie Jehani calls them, also talk about such 5-year periods that we have seen in the previous videos. I just didn't mention the one they have in Russia about, quote, integrating nano electronics with bio-objects. That's how they call it. As far as I understand, they were even bragging that they received already a piece for each and every citizen, even the unborns of the Russian Federation. It's a couple of boxes, and their program, it's got 2 stages outlined for now. We are in the middle of the first 5-year period, which will end the year 2025, and the second one will continue then until year 2030. And although a lot has been written about this program, poor Google, he couldn't find even a single search result for these keywords, while the other search engines, they found, of course, thousands of results. When Sayert had his vision about the future, I published it last year or before that, he also spoke about a couple of maybe 5-year periods, and that was even before these official documents surfaced. So what they call in modern terms assisted suicide was mentioned in the EndTimes Prophecies a long time ago. But I just got shocked by the numbers. In Canada alone, already 30,000 people have died. In this way, they started the program actually in 2016, where only terminally ill people were eligible. And then, was it a year ago, everybody who is seriously sick, whatever that means, became eligible. And now even kids are becoming eligible without the parents' consent. And what they need to have it happen is a signature. And hopefully they won't be getting the signatures the way they were getting them in UK, which is exactly the way described in the prophecies. Well, a certain person becomes a target. They try to extract, in some cases even forge, the signature of the person or the relatives, and whenever nobody gives a permit, they just go for it anyway. This type of news should not scare us, but should serve as a reminder that a peaceful and normal life might be possible only here. The Satanists have been organizing all kinds of unbelievable nonsense and shootings and accidents and catastrophes and all kinds of miseries, but the trend lately is that they do it way more often. Like just a couple of weeks ago at Davos, they kindly informed us that they're planning to put us in 15-minute prisons. And literally days after that, already in UK, they have announced them the spots and where they're gonna put the barrier for the vehicles. Of course, it's an extremely stupid setup because it's under the excuse of fighting carbon dioxide. But the way they put the barriers, actually the people will have to drive a few times longer distances to reach their destination and actually make more pollution. But they knew how stupid it is. That's why from the very beginning they announced the project and they said they will go for it no matter what the public opinion is. And basically they want to have people deprived of guns and practically the ability to move much, because there will be blocks for the cars. And it seems they're thinking even about the bicycles, which their enemy, the people, might begin using. And that's why they're advising you to dispose of them and give it as a gift to the armies they're recruiting. And of course, the English people will bend to anything. I mean, look at this. They're already restricting them, you can have only 2 tomatoes, or sorry, 2 packages, 2 cucumbers, lettuce, peppers, broccoli, cauliflower, raspberries, amongst the proposed legislation to ration even clothing and fuel forever, just like that for the climate, without any special occasion. And the people of UK will surely bend to everything. I think the test was their reaction to the unbelievable clown performance with the illegal immigrants there, housing them in hotels, giving them free credit cards. A society which bent even to that will bend to anything. It's obvious. Probably all of you remember those documentaries. We've seen them years ago about these people who are hypersensitive to all kinds of Wi-Fi's, 2G, even 3G. When all these powerful Wi-Fi routers and networks started popping up, these hypersensitive people, they resorted to practically living in Faraday cages. There were documentaries like this. They can come out, let's say, for 1 or 2 hours per day. Otherwise, they vomit, that they get sick, unbearable migraines. So the most remarkable thing out of the entire story was when they were interviewing them inside their cages, the journalists were asking them, well, if it is so bad, why aren't you just considering going to the wild where aren't any routers and Wi-Fi coverages? And the people answered from inside their Faraday cages, oh yes, we have thought about that, but decided not to do it because our life is here. We cannot imagine how can we live out there alone in nature. It feels scary. And that's how the humanity will be forced to live in a confined cage. In the beginning it will be an apartment, then 2 by 2 meters, and at the end maybe meter by meter. But people will go in them voluntarily, at least most of them, just because they never managed to grow up. And of course nowadays it will be made easier by inside suggestions by certain technology found in their blood. And of course the Line city of Saudi Arabia, where they plan to imprison some 9 million people absolutely voluntarily, with promises of luxurious and environmentally friendly life. The escalating tremors, earthquakes will make this entire construction not very likely to continue for long, but even if it does, and even if it is indeed a luxury for some fraction of its future residents, one thing is for sure, they will not be happy confined over there by the artificial intelligence. The Line is supposed to be their first proper 15-minute prison. And the way they advertise it, it's actually that everything will be within 5 minutes proximity of you. And here, the mass insanity, which was in the prophecies realm a couple of years ago when I started the EndTimes series, is now slowly, or not so slowly, turning into a reality. So literally the days before the Ohio disaster, there was this initiative, some sort of wearable ID tax. They even collected donations for it, and there were volunteers who received the first wristbands with their new identification for free. And unfortunately, to gullible people nowadays, these disasters will be happening more and more often. I mean, there is like a regular series of what is it now? These chemical poisonings. Before it was a series of egg manufacturing facilities on fire. And many people still believe that all this could be just by chance, just because they haven't seen hard proof that it is not by chance. Also, I noticed with the Turkey disaster, people tend to rule it out as completely natural until they see with their own eyes convincing evidence that it is not. This is somewhat old-fashioned. Now, the current situation is that not only Mother Nature, but also some of her insane sons, certain humans, are capable of organizing earthquakes. So until people see convincing evidence with their own eyes, the intelligent assumption they should be making is that it is 50-50 chance what is the actual origin of a given earthquake. And back to the Ohio disaster. It struck East Palestine. I really doubt they picked up that name by chance. You know about the voodoo dolls practice. They make a small copy of something, and whatever they do to it befalls the actual target as well. And then a plane with environmental experts accidentally crashed while they were flying to examine what happened in East Palestine, which is strongly reminiscent to this African incident, if you remember again. And they gathered the most prominent environmental scientists, and accidentally the plane crashed. And now a few remarks on long-term provision packing. As previously discussed, everything has to be vacuum packed, but over time I started noticing that packets, some of them they tend to open after 1 or 2 years or immediately. Maybe like 10-20% of them at least lose their vacuum. And it seems other people are having the same problem. I am sure the reason are the very low quality vacuum packers. The cheaper and the middle range, they're simply no good. They make a very thin line of sealing, and no wonder it will not last long. So people who have more experience than me in these things, they have found out that it seems the best option is to put things in this type of airtight containers, and then the vacuum effect is created by adding oxygen absorbers, which you can make easily yourself. Just mix equal parts in terms of weight of iron shavings and salt. The iron shavings should not be rusty, because the process of rusting is what will eat up the oxygen within a couple of hours, let's say within 1 day, the oxygen in the container. If you can't find iron shavings from some workshop or something, you can buy them. They are sold for chemical experiments. For example, for students, there is iron powder for sale. And after you mix the iron and the salt, you add the same amount of ground charcoal, just normal charcoal from the fireplace, the same amount in terms of volume. You can put your DIY oxygen absorbers in, for example, tea bags. You can get them on AliExpress. Because it's not a very good idea to have loose iron shavings in your food. And if your oxygen absorber is working properly, and the container is really airtight, then the next day you should see that the container has shrunk. Well, that's the modern way. There is more traditional method, and that is also when you have airtight containers like this one. So they put a couple of tablespoons of salt, then fill up half of the container with the provisions, then again a bit more salt, and then more provisions, and then more salt on the top. When they were packing lentils, I saw they were first heating them for I don't know, 10-20 minutes in the oven, and then when they cool down they would put them in the bottles. But rice, they were not warming up before packing. This is a very good question. The situation with the gender roles is a perfect illustration of how subtle is the devilish deceit. The modern concepts of the gender roles were distorted. They were not as God intended even before this current campaign of extreme perversion started. So the Satanists are cleverly taking advantage of this situation that, first of all, people in general are not comfortable with themselves and not comfortable with their masculinity and femininity. So again, as usual, as a solution, they offer far worse deal, something which is 100 or thousands times even more distorted and wrong. And using clever marketing techniques, of course, they find also customers for their new insane ideas. Now, the gender roles described by Seth are of personalities who are more in harmony with their higher self. They're more sattvic, the term is explained in the previous videos. These are people illuminated by knowledge, and they're not so polarized by these bodily designations just because they do not identify so much with the body. While the most recent satanic suggested roles, they are exactly the opposite, grossly tamasic, are of mentally sick, disturbed individuals, desperately trying to modify their bodies with the hope that the psyche will be more comfortable in a new situation, which unfortunately doesn't happen to them. Indeed, Seth says that the healthy way to identify with one of the sexes is less polarized. And as far as the new satanic gender concepts, I don't know, maybe somebody may argue that they're less polarized, but I can argue that they're even more polarized because they border, or should I say perfectly represent insanity, in the state of which one is much more polarized than having the previous modern concepts of what is being a woman or being a man all about. And it is extremely important to understand the principle they're using because they will be using it a lot. Like, for example, with the financial system. When they bring the new one, will they call it smart or quantum? It doesn't matter. It will be gold-based or assets-based, as it should be. That is justice. And it will look really like a godly concept in overall, without a few small details which most people will not notice, like, for example, that it will be built on the blood of the people who will they have to murder or rob, deprive them of their property to create that system, and anything built on crime will not last. That most people will not notice. Also, they will not notice that this system will cannot endure much because it will be built on shifting sands, on the lies of the wolves dressed in sheepskin. Also, most people will not notice that the system is kind of good, but it is not really for all. Like, for example, those people who did not take the smart cards, they won't be able to participate. And, you know, the big herd, this will look like a small negligible details for the big herd. But later on, when they will have to pay the very bitter price for enrolling in that satanic system, it will be very, very sad. So those who don't want to fall in the satanic traps should pay attention to this type of details. Now, in these questions, autoimmune disease, yet another fashionable disease name. Actually, many doctors still argue that it doesn't even exist, it's just a definition. Well, it is so little known that is it properly diagnosed or not, it doesn't matter because anyway, those who put this type of diagnosis can't cure it, at least in most cases. You are looking for a particular herbs. Yes, ayahuasca and iboga should be helping in most cases if they're properly used. I'm sure more than in 95% of the cases. For iboga, even microdosing should work. As far as ayahuasca, you can try with microdosing, and if the case is very severe, then you may need also proper ceremonies. These same herbs will be the answer for all allergies. If you're having legality issues at your place, then you can try kambo and cat's claw, chuchuasi, anamu, maybe. CBD oil and MMS, certainly they are worth trying. Next question, how do we clean the mucus? By eliminating the infection which has caused it. For that, I recommend the Ayurvedic preparation of septilin sold by the Himalaya Drug Company. And now to detoxify, yet another modern alternative circles escape from actual diagnosing of the things, and that's good. That's much better than the hospital practice of further damaging the sick people with endless useless tests and definitions and making them even more sick by de facto making them meditate on various complications and conditions while they go through this ritual of diagnosing. To avoid that, the New Age doctors, they just tell you, oh, you need to detoxify and that's all. They prescribe this even to people with cancers, people who feel sick because their DNA is transforming into the DNA of a cyborg. And people with all kinds of sicknesses, they're simply being told that you have to detoxify and that's all. The advice is good, but how to do it actually? When they have banned the most powerful local remedy, which is hemp, and they have allowed in a very debilitated form, so to say, with some of the main ingredients being outlawed. That's why the hemp products can't do much in many cases. And that's why I recommend foreign for most of us herbs, ayahuasca, iboga, kambo, and the rest. Some of the details are in the holistic cure playlist, others are in older videos. Of course, there are individual herbs which will help individual people get better, or in this language, detoxify, because detoxified basically means you're sick of something and I don't know what it is. But the knowledge of how to find out which is the right individual herb which will help everybody individually, that is lost. That's why it's good to use the master plants. Aya, iboga, maybe rose oil if it is taken long enough and in sufficient quantities, maybe also it will help all these ailments which you are listing. I have not really tried it that extensively, it's quite expensive. And also conclusions cannot be drawn just by the results for one person. And the answer is the same for the lymph nodes. Now, I had that problem myself, and for me personally, the crystals helped me. But I am unable to prescribe, like, in what quantity, which crystal, in what time frame will help other people. Now, the question about the pets, what are we going to feed them during the end times? Whatever you have in your provisions, for example, if now you have chicken and you have extra eggs, you can easily make egg powder with a dehydrator or even with a simple oven, and that keeps for many years, 5, 10, some people say even 15 or 20. And cats and dogs, they will surely eat that when they're hungry, really hungry. Do we have a chance to protect them? Surely for some time. According to some prophecies, at the very end there will be no animals. I don't know if it will be really so. Will the animal kingdom disappear completely and then get repopulated by the angels? Or will some of the current animals survive through the entire ordeal? That I don't know, but if the second is the case, if you yourself remain clean of the mark of the beast, then usually the dependents on you, like animals, they also get protection from the angels. Now, what if you cannot take care of the new kittens and puppies every new season? I can tell you mostly about cats. Inbreeding is not a problem amongst cats if they're left to live the natural way, free. Even if occasional mating amongst sibling cats happens, nature takes care of this its own way, and there is no real problem with it. Now, if you let your cats live the natural way, you will not have problem with too many kittens, because when the kittens grow enough, maybe they're like about 1 year old or sometimes even earlier, when they're capable of hunting for themselves and taking care of themselves without a human, the mothers, they tell them to go and look for their own territory, and the fathers also try to chase away, especially the young boys. But this works for natural cats. The mothers, they need to be clever to know how to bring up kittens and how to educate them. They're showing them how to hunt. Like here, I've seen like lessons on hunting snakes, how to catch them, how to stalk prey. All these things they are teaching to their kittens. They are not couch potato cats. For example, here in this village, nobody sterilizes cats. They're free souls. They're not slaves. Even when they have a house, it doesn't mean that they are obliged to stay there. They go to other houses. Nobody locks them up. Nobody feels that they have the right to do so because they don't own their souls. But the main point is that although nobody sterilizes them, the overall number of cats in the village has decreased dramatically over the last few decades. And I have heard that this is the case in other villages as well. However, even if you live in the wild and your cats are always out, if you intervene too much in the natural process and just turn them and teach them to be couch potatoes, then they may not go away and find their own territory. And if you live in an urban or suburban setting where there is no natural prey, cats cannot live in a natural way, maybe you take it as a call from the Lord to consider moving to nature. Because now it is only pets that cannot have normal lives in congested places, but tomorrow it will be humans as well. Or at least it will be much, much harder over there. So with cats it is easy as long as you live in a proper natural place and you don't treat them as slaves or as property, everything will be fine. With dogs it's a bit different. Everything has become so distorted and unnatural that there is almost no way to keep in a natural way one's best friend. The dog is man's best friend. I also love dogs, but because I don't know the answer to your question regarding the puppies, that's why I keep only male dogs or abandoned sterilized dogs. I don't give them for sterilization myself. yet one more example of something very dangerous, which I have been pointing out for quite some time now, and that is how sometimes those who sincerely want to fight the Satanists actually help them by glorifying their projects. I will take this article as an example. It's quite a lengthy article, and the author starts with describing a number of technologies which literally can rewrite the human species and turn them into something else. That's fine, one should know what's going on, but this is the conclusion. This is the solution which the author proposes. There need to be a public conversation about the synthetic biology and neurotechnology right now, and there need to be policies enacted that strictly define and bind its limits. If not, if there is no such conversation and no such policies, then the human beings in the future will inevitably be reduced to engineered products. Now, as far as the public conversation, it is going on, and actually the Satanists are encouraging it because the people have lost their minds to such an extent that even when the politicians in plain words are telling them that we are gonna make you cyborgs, they just bah in answer. Obviously, there will be no international legislation against the satanic plan, because we know very well that they have loyal devils appointed at key positions since long time. So, although the intent of the writer of this article is to wake up the people, it may have the opposite effect on some, because the conclusion is that human beings in the future will inevitably be reduced to engineered products. And when they start issuing the smart cards, many good people will be misled and will take them out of sheer hopelessness. Hopelessness for which there is no real reason. We actually live in very interesting times. But too many, even good people, will be infected with this artificial hopelessness. Just because the authors of this type of articles, they lack that broader perspective, like the view from above about the journey of the souls and the purpose of their earthly incarnations. While people who will not be reduced to engineered products, many of them, not all, but many of them, at least some couple of thousand of them, are relocating to the wilderness of Siberia, building simple earth homes 100 kilometers away from any official settlement. They see that public conversations about synthetic biology will lead to dead end. They do not waste their time with ridiculous hopes for legislative binding limits. Instead, they live with the living Lord.